How long has it been? How long will it be? These questions, by the winds that caress the blithesome mountains, we ask. Take us away. Take us from this place, and deliver us from the evil we endure.
The final words spoken by Staff Sergeant Janos. I stared at the sky once again, its blackened colors harboring unseen terrors I knew little of, hoping never to learn more. My luck would betray me upon the coming weeks, though, for I would witness terror in its purest form. In the first 6 weeks, we stood watch over a land of beauty. Autumn colors of brown and golden yellow fascinated weary eyes. The daily regimens were easier then, as the winds were gentle in their caressing ways. For a moment, I had met peace. Word had spread of an unknown foe that left little trace of their presence. Hive cities were void of life, leaving only signs of gruesome death. We came prepared for war. Not this. Each passing hour brought tension as we waited on the news of conflict or an approaching army, yet we were met with silence. Cold nights held firmly against disciplined veterans as sentry shifts rotated. Food and sleep became scarce, and still we waited, tempting our imaginations of what is to come. And then it began. Little by little, we lost contact with forward positions. A fog crept in, surrounding the outer edges of the defensive perimeter. It stretched as far as the eye could see, and we knew that now we faced our enemies. Artillery barrages began terrain denial. Air support laid hate on last known strategic positions within the mist. It was a restless chaos, but it was organized and unforgiving. That all came to a halt when a dreadful scream sang from the fog. The creeping noise was almost human. The sound echoed into the wind as it pierced through the cries of our weapons. It was as if something was replicating a child's terror, rising and lowering in tone where it felt natural. There was a collective moment of pause, listening, watching. Quickly orders were shouted, breaking the stunned silence and emerging a new sense of urgency. In a rash decision, our Lord Commander made the choice of activating the psychic barrier, a last-ditch effort which was meant to be against overwhelming odds. The chain of command erupted into arguments for hours about the decision, some condoning, while others condemned. Why that man chose such a steep action, no one knew. But in the late hours of the day, we all thanked the Emperor for it. Our enemy finally revealed themselves. I looked once more into the distance and saw figures upon the hills. They did not move or raise a weapon at us. They stood idle and quiet. My skin crawled with unease as I could see their rusted armor, oddly broken, and spiked helms. Things that slithered and moved within the fog between those corrupted Astartes. Do something. Stop the suspense and just attack already. I spoke in a whisper, not wanting my thoughts to be heard. Do you say something? It was the voice of Staff Sergeant Janos. He was an observant man, one whose eyes had witnessed many atrocities and yearned for rest. His footsteps lightly came in as I turned to greet him.
No, Sergeant.
Nothing of importance, at least. Just keeping watch for things. I let my words unravel a false sense of motive, trying to suppress the truth. I understand you're scared. I won't lie to you. I am as well. This I did not expect, but to hear he felt the same provided some solace. His voice seemed different. His usual tone of defiance against the odds no longer held, but it was not fractured. I know we must accept our fates if need be, but being in this moment, I was unable to finish my thoughts. It was a dangerous idea to consider, and I had already let it slip. Only here, only now, only for the moment. It will fade, Galen. Once we engage and that first round cracks, it will fade. I let myself remember why I am here, why I do what I do for moments like these. He spoke looking to me at first. Mid-speech, he turned to the fog. As I reach the end of the galaxy, I hold on to those memories. I give each brother and sister in arms a chance to be remembered by someone. Their families can ask of their sons and daughters their last moments. Every fallen guardsman that serves under my command, I give their families closure. At this point, his speech became almost a monologue. He stared into that distant horizon, seeing the shadows that await us. But I do not let it consume me. He glanced down for a moment, meeting my eyes, and smiled. How do you not let the sense of everything we do, everything we've seen, consume you? My voice slightly shook. Such a conversation could have gotten us executed, but I was too engaged to care of such consequences. Embrace it. I will not force you to shun from your terror, because the reality is, it never ends. Every day that passes brings another hellish nightmare or corrupted night that we may never awaken from. You must be comfortable with this. Dine with the horrors of this galaxy and show them you are their equal. Rebuke their false gods and take control of your own faith. With his last words, he finally broke eye contact and stared once again at the traitor Astartes in the fog. When the time comes, Galen, spit in their face and defy your death, for we still have much to do in this life. Sergeant Janos rested a hand upon my shoulder after he spoke, bringing what comfort he could. Here stood a man, a mortal, one who faced atrocities and rejected its temptation. I could not let him down, not while he lived at least. It posed as a blasphemous deed to die fearful before the enemy, and I am no heretic. Soon we were encased in it. All outside the psychic shield was a blind sheet of white. We knew nothing of what happened to those outside the protective barrier. It was upon the seventh day that we heard the most peculiar sound. A quiet, lone bell sounding of dull metal rang slow and methodical. At first we assumed nothing of it, but it never ceased. The dull ringing was joined in from another on the opposite side of the fortress. Two notes chased each other to a dizzying depth of dull brass, and then another. Three notes rang in an odd unity, but the third sounded as if it were bouncing off the structures around us. First one would ring, and then the second, and then finally the third, coming in randomly to keep the mind guessing of its presence. A fourth made its entrance. The chorus of bells echoed with a booming intensity. The effect of their song was barraging to the senses, but we held our composure. The first rang. The second followed. The third placed its timing so freely, and the fourth came in, sparing no second behind its predecessor. The last instrument seemed angered at the others. It was as if they They were talking. It seemed a language was developing in their tone, and after listening for a length, I began to understand. Observation was the first's duty. It would shout everything it could see, while the second was asking what each thing was. It was blind and relied on the first for sight, while the third, that fool, the third would clamor and confusing the first two as they spoke. The fourth seemed older, its dull vibration settling in its song and leaving out the bright tones, trying to bring order to the three of them. We listened as they argued and played like siblings on an adventurous day. They rang ignorant of the hardened veterans behind autocannons, mortars, and other crew-served weapons. We watched as those plague-ridden Astartes stayed where they were, continuing their watch over us, waiting for our response. As the sound reached a crescendo, a sudden silence forced its way to the end of the seventh day. My grip tightened upon my weapon as I felt the choking strain of my heart-pumping adrenaline, waiting for the first sign of attack. Finally, something came into view. It was a spherical object of flesh and bone soaring through the skies, leaving droplets of toxic decay below its path. As it made contact with the psychic barrier, it left streaks of corroded phlegm in its wake. Flashes of bolter fire immediately erupted within the fog, and following its dramatic display came the deafening roar of horrid unseen creatures. Rounds detonated against the shield with splashes of fire, and silhouettes of massive figures loomed closer at an alarming rate. Instinctively, we answered with our own ordnance, a thunderous barrage of death-hungry explosives devouring anything they touched. For those few seconds, it was nothing but a pure, absolute hell. The manifestations of our will was carried in those first few minutes. It was everything we prepared for, and we did not let our enemies get a moment to gain fire superiority. Each flash of a bolter was a target for our artillery. The horde of shadowy figures provided a hunting ground for our bombers. None would be spared from the Imperium's might. I fired blindly into the mist, hoping to see something bleed or hear some monstrous cry of pain. We have no idea what we're shooting at. It was the 7th hour of the 7th day. The sky is now black. The wind moves with an unnatural speed, and I fear the shadows cast in the fog.
OP1, can you confirm PID? We're firing on Faith out here.
Crimson, OP1, no visuals on contact. I say again, we have no visuals on contact.
All stations, this net, ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. Commence ASRs and AORs. Crimson, OP4, no activity.
Crimson, OP1, no activity. Crimson, OP3, no contact.
Crimson OP2, 3 unknown approaching.
Crimson, Skyhawk. Confirmed 3 unidentified within fog approaching Eastern Gate.
Crimson copies all. OP2, keep eyes on and identify. Skyhawk, illuminate target.
Crimson OP2, we have visual on 3 Astartes. I say again, we have visual on 3 traitor Astartes. How copy?
Crimson copies, you are clear to engage.
OP2 copies.
For such a beautiful land, I find it disheartening to see its inhabitants fearful. You must be tired of all this foolishness by now. Maybe even hungry. Day after day, you spend countless hours suffering.
Traitors to the Emperor and to the Imperium of Man. Surrender now, and we will grant you a quick passage to see your false gods. There is no alternative.
Oh, how the blind speak with pride and confidence. We have stood in the grandfather's presence and adopted only peace. Such hatred, let it be for those who wish ill upon you.
I come offering you peace. I bring forth an opportunity and suffering to end hardships. Were you not ignored, forgotten even? There are many who have joined us of their own free will. Please, think of your fellow brothers in arms. Have you ever known a peaceful day, one free of conflict?
Enough of your lies, abomination. Temptation of the false gods are not welcomed here. You had a moment to accept your deaths. Now we bring you the Emperor's blessing.
Send it.
I do wish they would have welcomed us with open minds.
Brothers, we welcome all life to the Grandfather without prejudice. Were we not once lost in our ways?
Yes. Once.
What are we to do, Pathios? Taro. Alaroth. Our hands have been forced to a tragic end. Torturous are the days that we must orchestrate the suffering of others. Oh well. Give them what they wish.